Good morning. Here's Frank Kaufmann. Sorry I've been away for a little bit. Other projects have taken up my time. This morning I put together a little piece called Who is Beside You? Who is Beside You? Listeners know that I try to keep away from parochial preaching from within any single religious tradition or spiritual tradition, which I do here as well. But here, the basis for my comments and thoughts come straight out of the New Testament, the Christian Bible. It's funny, they dropped the term Old Testament, which is kind of a disregard to the Jews for whom that is their scripture. They call it the Hebrew scriptures, but they didn't drop New Testament. So there's a bit of a kind of a half-done job at being correct and respectful there. But anyway, this is from the New Testament, which is written written about the time about Jesus' life, about a little bit of time of his followers after Jesus was murdered or executed by the authorities. And the New Testament contains a bunch of letters that Paul wrote to various young communities that sprung up from his mission work up through Asia Minor all the way out to Rome. So anyway, it's called the New Testament, and the passage that I'm basing my remarks on this morning is Luke, the book of Luke. There's 4 Gospels, John, Mark, Luke, and Matthew. They all purport to describe the same things, and yet they're extremely different from one another. I don't believe at any point they contradict each other, but their emphases are entirely different, and some will include some things in the story that others leave out. Just for fun, for biblical, just for stuff about the Bible, they're called the synoptic Gospels. So it means that they see together, synoptic. They see together. They, if you take all of the points of view, they converge on something that's helpful to understand the life of Jesus, who's the center of Christian life. So this particular passage from Luke 23, I'll just read it. And so my as I said, the topic of my talk or my little comments here is who is beside you. And I'll just read this passage. It comes as Jesus is being executed. He was brought before the authorities by people who found him heretical above all. He was tried by the foreign powers, the Romans who were ruling over the Israelites in their own country. So Rome ran this kind of protectorate or colony or something like that. And so this guy, Pontius Pilate, is kind of stuck, with some kind of bad assignment and has to try to kind of rule this people that with rules and laws and concerns and obsessions that are utterly not his own. He doesn't care which Jew calls themselves the Messiah or whatever. So he has to try Jesus just according to Roman law, and actually tries to let Jesus go. During that trial, he couldn't even find anything he couldn't get the point, honestly. He goes, can I just kind of whip this guy, flog him, and release him? And there was an uproar. There was an outcry that demanded that Jesus' crimes were so horrific that death was the only thing that matched. Anybody who knows the story of him can clearly see that there's literally, you can have problems with what he does. Of course, not now, he just went around helping poor people and widows, and, who knows what life was like day to day, but it's virtually impossible to find something that that would cause an outcry that the only thing that could save us from the horrors of this guy is that he'd be put to death. But anyway, Pilate is left with no chance, no option, according to however the laws were executed those days or implemented, and so Jesus put to death. Then there's the story of the Passion. It's very moving. I think even non-Christians reading it open-mindedly would find the story very moving. It's just full of stuff. Simon of Cyrene, this big black guy, is just kind of dragged off the street and carries the cross behind Jesus, and there's a lot in there that I believe is very important to ponder in contemporary reality. But all this, I diverge. All this is not what I'm talking about. So I'm going to read this. It's Luke 23. Okay, starts with verse 36. And the soldiers who mocked him, coming up, offering him sour wine. Okay, that's a kind of a mockery. It would be like jailers or wardens with no kindness, or just see prisoners or condemned as dehumanized. It's just sport for them. These people have been kind of removed of any degree of any normal human things, which just happened for among people who are constantly confronted with criminality, and they're a base lot, anyway. So they're offering him wine, sour wine, and they're mocking him. If you're king of the Jews, just save yourself. This is, we'll have to go into more stuff to even get into why they're using this term. But these Roman centurions, they had no use for Jews basically anyway. And so here's some guy being executed for the hideous crime of being called king of the Jews. And so this is just sport for them. This is just mockery. If you're king of the Jews, save yourself. And there were two criminals who were condemned simultaneously with Jesus and were crucified side by side. So there were all kinds of crimes being punished there that day on the hill of Golgotha, as it's called, the hill of the skull. And so there's Jesus and two people hanging beside him, condemned criminals, plain old everyday, the type of people who were legitimately put to death for the extent of their crimes. And so they're trying to make it through their final moments, just like any of us would. No matter how criminal I might be, I come to the end of my life of crime or my life of sadistic kind of torture of people, or kind of delighting in the suffering I cause because I've got a gun or a knife or something like that. I reach the end of my life, and suddenly what I am is, and it's a serious matter. So the criminals are just caught up in this kind of melee. A lot of the crucified criminals of the time, it's no big deal. There's not a big parade. There's not a march through the town. There's not some guy carrying his own cross or something like that. It's just a form of execution. It's public execution. That this is supposed to be, what is it called? A deterrent. So that those who were condemned hung by the side of the road, and this would kind of try to help you not be a bad guy. That could be me hanging there, or I don't know the nature of the period, but parents saying, "You see what happens if you don't be good," or anyway, that's just my speculation. But anyway, so it's just an execution scene. There's a lot of guys there to be executed. Jesus is one of them. These couple of criminals are one of them. But Jesus was kind of a celebrity figure. It was a big execution because he had a big following. He had been a religious leader. His followers grew and grew. He was controversial. He had managed to aggravate some pretty big people, members of the Sanhedrin, members of the religious authority, and so this was a big deal. And so the criminals are just hanging there, and one of the criminals kept deriding him. So he's kind of going along with these Roman soldiers, and he's saying, So I'm reading. One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." So he's kind of choosing as his last moments before he expires, before he breathes his last. He's just kind of caught up in the crowd. He's just a kind of an unreconstructed, plain old everyday kind of grotesque guy who's probably always been selfish, has no capacity for human feeling, and at best is just trying to get saved, and his worst is just kind of doesn't even have enough sense to revere his own passing. And now the Romans are mocking Jesus, and he's right in there with the, "Hey, aren't you King of God? Save yourself and us." But to the right of Jesus, so this criminal was hanging on the left, completely self-absorbed, and in the spirit of kind of mocking Jesus, who had very little to recommend a death sentence, quite honestly. And then this guy is either just in the spirit of mocking, or maybe with half a hope, hey, maybe I can get out of this. If aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But it was in a mocking way, as the scripture reports anyway. But the other thief, the one on the right, rebukes the one on the left. So he's kind of talking past Jesus, like kind of leaning around or over, or who knows what's possible while you're hanging by the palms of your hand, nailed through the palms of your hands. But anyway, he goes, he somehow has enough left him, and he goes, "Do you not fear God, since you're under the same sentence of condemnation?" And then this one on the right goes on and continues to say, we're condemned justly. So there's a massive difference right there. He's in a relationship with the fact that he's been put to death for his own deeds, and he acknowledges it. He goes, "We're condemned justly," or in other words, saying, "I'm condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." The thief on the right somehow has managed, in a fleeting last chance of his life, to come up with some remarkable stuff. First of all, he's acknowledging and accepting and even welcoming, but that he's justly condemned. He's not even resenting that his life is being taken from him. I did these things. This is the consequence. Here I sit. It's a remarkable posture to be. You rarely find people who are capable of saying, this extreme misfortune or extreme kind of justice being wrought against me it's natural. It's like gravity. I did it. This is what happens. I'm condemned justly. This is what I deserve for what I've done. That's already remarkable, as it is. And then while you're losing your life, he's kind of obsessed with the concern for the experience, the dying experience of some guy beside him whom he never met, Jesus. He just heard about him, or knows about him, or maybe thought he's a good guy. This is not, like read the papers. Of course, they didn't read the papers, but so here he is, like in the maximum amount of indignity, maximum amount of pain, maximum amount of like utter hopelessness, and he's concerned about somebody else. That itself is miraculous. He said, this man has done nothing wrong. And he turns to Jesus and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." So he tried to tie himself to his fate to somebody who he understood to be a good guy. Christian interpretation of this is, it's not exactly my cup of tea. It's just kind of reduced to confess your sins, believe in Jesus, just be saved or something. Okay, maybe it's true. I personally think it's probably true, but that's to me that's too flat, honestly. Basically, he goes, we're all dying here all together. You definitely have some sort of destiny that has to be blessed. You're being put to death unjustly. And kind of the universe is just, it's sure you're going somewhere. Just remember me. He says, just remember me. He's not asking to save his soul. He's just saying, I tried to put a stop to this. I leaned across and told this loud, vile guy, shut the F up. This guy is decent. And Jesus turns to this thief, according to the records. It's probably stylized, but that's not the point. Jesus turns to this guy and says, truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. So Jesus, regardless of what anyone wants to do religiously or theologically or in the realm of salvation or power of forgiveness, or that all has to do with faith systems and doctrines, which I love, honestly speaking. But it isn't the power of Jesus to kind of forgive a man of his sins. That isn't the point. To me, anyway, as I'm listening to this, and this is why I wanted to speak for a couple of moments this morning, it is that I'm not begging for anybody to like me or defend me, or that's not my game, nor was it Jesus' game. He's not sitting there feeling sorry for himself or moaning or weeping. If you read about the life of Jesus, he's ridiculously courageous. He's ridiculously non-self-protective and non-self-pitying, absolutely down the line. So he's not kind of emotionally weak and kind of drinking up that, oh, this guy likes me. He's just simply moved by this guy. He's moved by this guy. And he said, people like you're like, kind of saying like, you're like me. When he says, today you will be with me in paradise. In a weird way, he's saying, you're like me. Something about you cares for what's right and what's good and what's true. Cares about what happens to others, cares that people be treated fairly, and is courageous and is selfless. I think personally that Jesus turning to the guy and says, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise, it's kind of a comfort beyond measure when things genuinely look hopeless. Jesus had so much. He's young. He's only 33 or so, 32 or 3. He's young. He could have worked another 50, 60, 70 years, and probably not then, but another 50 years maybe. Imagine the good a guy like that could do as he matures, as he becomes 40 or 50. Think of the good that a person of that magnitude of character could be doing at 50 or 60. What if he successfully started to get some following instead of opposition among the established religious leaders? Imagine. And so it is a hopeless time. It does, pardon my language here, it does suck to like have so much you can do and be being killed. And in the middle of that, somebody gets you for a second. And to me is one of the hundreds of scriptures around the world, all of which lift us up. This one really lifts me up because one guy is called God himself by his believers. Another guy is like flat out a criminal, plainly a criminal, who by his own account deserves to die for what he's done. You can't do much worse than deserve to die what you've done. And somehow these guys lock eyes, eye to eye, and Jesus, the Son of God, or at least a certainly enlightened figure, looks and says, you will be with me. We have the same destiny. Just because the guy reveals his nature. Who knows what led to his criminality? But he reveals his nature. He takes responsibility for what he does. He doesn't complain about the sentence he's been given. He's concerned about the dignity and proper respect for somebody who's a good person. And so to try to draw to a close, because this ended up longer than I thought, but anyway, it's all right, I hope. what I named this little thing podcast is, who is beside you? Who's beside you? Because we are all three. We are all three. And we pass down through the center of this story ourselves. Not that we're Jesus, not that we're godlike or something like that, but sometimes we're good. Hopefully, a lot of time, try to be good more than less. But sometimes we're perfectly good, really, no matter who you are or we are. And at that point, when we're perfectly good and can be no better, own that one. People aren't going to call you Jesus or Christ, but if you did perfectly good and can do no better, then there you sit. And then for sure, there is someone to your left that will turn to you and say, if you're so damn good, why didn't you help this? Why didn't you help me? You're not good. Look at me. They're there. They're there. They are on your left, and they hate you. They mock you. They deride you. They're with the crowds that are sure you're a charlatan. And sometimes we're not. Sometimes I'm not. And then there's those on my right that they're not saying, whispering in my ear, oh, no, you're a good guy. I really know you're a good guy. No, they're coming out, they're baring their chest, they're standing forward, and with nothing to gain, saying, get off this guy. Get off this guy. You and me, we're the same. We deserve this, but not that guy. And so this is our lives. This is our lives. That we don't really think about it. We just we look at it as, this kind of moment of God, and the sky's darkened and earthquakes and the resurrection. Yeah, that's all. If you're a believer, Christian, true. Or a dramatic tale of the intervention of God in human affairs, no matter what you believe or don't believe. But in this story is us, and what Jesus did was he didn't say thanks. The guy wasn't whispering in his ear, like I'm sure a lot of people are whispering in your ear. Oh no, whatever somebody says, I think you're great. So what? Don't whisper in my ear. And then when Jesus saw, he gave him everything he had. That's all Jesus had at the time. The destiny to be in paradise. That was the whole of what he had. And so when Jesus saw a person with warts and all, with his flaws, so criminal that he self-confessed deserved to die, he just gave him everything he had. Gave him everything he had. And so who's beside us? Look around. You'll see. You'll know. That's who's beside you. Quite honestly, that's who's beside you. And in our effort to be decent human beings, when we see someone like the thief on the left, then we can at least try to be a little bit like Jesus and say, what can I do for you, man? And don't be cheap, Jesus didn't say, oh, I'll see what I can do for you. He was grateful and kind of rummaged around in his pockets to see what he had left. And what he had was destiny, to be in paradise. And so for those on my left and those on my right, Jesus didn't kind of like yell at the guy on the right, hey, what the F, he's like, get off my case, I'm dying here. He didn't even have anything to do with them. That's smart right there. But for the person who defended him with nothing to gain from it, he immediately just found everything he had, gave it to him, gave him the destiny of the living Lord, of Christ. Today you will be with me. So anyway, that's my story. That's my thoughts. That's it's a way to pass through life, and humbly while I'm chatting here, I recommend, please pay attention and study the story more. It's in Luke 23, not because you need to be a Christian, or you can be or can't be, but let's not miss what's preserved to give us insights into how to go through life right. Okay, thanks very much. Be with us. Be together again soon.